First step always is you actually have to make a conscious decision that, do you know what, I want to actually change.
What would you say to someone who says that they cannot meditate?
Experiencing mental health problems taught me really that happiness is definitely something you can achieve.
You can't stay the same, because if you stay the same, you'll still be in the same circumstance, the same environment.
For a lot of people, they want to become a certain person. They want to have certain values. But the truth is, if you're very introspective and you look back over your own life, there have been times throughout your life where you've embodied those different characteristics.
Would you describe yourself as a self-help influencer?
I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but I don't really like the words self-help or influencer, to be honest. I just sort of make videos on things that I'm interested in, and those happen to be topics on self-help, I guess. So it's kind of a somewhere in between.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel you with self-help. It's a bit cringe.
Right.
Yeah, well, it makes me cringe. I don't probably shouldn't be cringe, but I get your point.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you've some very tasteful videos, Tom. And yeah, I'm not just saying that as a kind of light introduction. I watched a few of your videos, and like you put like they're very like tastefully and artistically done, almost soothing.
Right. Thank you, man.
Yeah. So and yeah, I've gone down a few different like self-help rabbit holes over through the years, and I think like a lot of different self-help influencers, and I don't like that term, but a lot of guys who post content on like personal development and growth. Like I think everyone has their own audience, and I think personally, I think some people are some YouTubers or influencers like a bit extreme, but I really think your content is very balanced, and I think the overall message is just living like a balanced, well-lived life. Would you agree?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that is generally I think what I like to do with my videos is push forward a more kind of realistic approach for people, an approach that says, yeah, like you are going to fuck up a lot and that's okay.
Got you, and definitely think fucking up small bit can be a good thing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, because you have to try things. But yeah, it's definitely not a YouTube channel on how to be a Chad or
Yeah.
anything along those lines. And you post a lot about like binge scrolling and like how it's a waste of time, and it's like the biggest addiction of our generation. Like, is it even possible to like get rid of doom scrolling? Because like I've tried numerous times and I definitely reduced it, but like I think we're too integrated with our phones to prevent it fully.
I mean, even personally, I've probably not gone for more than about a week without scrolling on anything at all. But I do believe that there's definitely a future for it. I think you need to, in a way, reshape your entire life around it. You need to have a whole lifestyle change where you have enough things to fill the gap with. Because I find this with a lot of addictions is people who try and stop scrolling, for example, or try and quit porn is another big one. They try and stop and they remove that thing from their life, but then they don't put anything back in its place. And so like a crucial part, I think, of beating scrolling is just having like a complete lifestyle change where you reincorporate so many new things into your life to fill that void that doom scrolling's left.
Did you go through a period then where you were like so super dopamine addicted?
I feel like these days it's hard not to do that. So I definitely did have periods, especially when I was younger, maybe 15, 16, where I was, yeah, constantly scrolling, watching YouTube all day. I'd come home from school, I remember this, at like 4 o'clock, and I'd just watch YouTube until 10. So there's definitely been periods of my life where I've been like heavily addicted to dopamine.
Yeah, me too. And I think YouTube is a killer. I tell myself it's not as bad because some of the content is educational.
Yeah, I mean, to a point, I agree with that though.
Yeah,
I think
I agree.
YouTube is better in a way than these other platforms. I mean, firstly, so I use a couple of Chrome extensions. One is called Unhooked, and the other one's called Hide YouTube Thumbnails. So in that way, I've kind of like made my YouTube page very intentional. So really, I can only ever see videos on there that are from people I've either subscribed to or if I specifically search for them. So in that way, I've kind of made a YouTube feed that isn't just pushing content at me. I actually have to go out and seek what I want to watch. And so I think YouTube is better in that regard, at least.
Did you ever go on a social media detox?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I've got Instagram downloaded now on my phone, but like, there have definitely been times where I stopped using it. But I always found, and it goes back to the being very strict on self improvement thing. What I found is there's not really much point, because at the end of the day, Instagram is useful, right? I like talking to my friends on there. I like seeing what they post. I like posting things, and I'm not really going to get away from that. So I think what's better to do is to try and manage your use of these things rather than just saying very black and white, right, Instagram is bad, let's just get rid of it and delete my whole account.
I deleted it for a year in university, and yeah, I went kind of through like a transitionary phase in university from like partying a lot and then like going to like house party raves and all that stuff, and then like completely doing kind of a 180 on that. Um and then during that phase I like deleted Instagram for a year,
Right.
just like for mental health reasons really. I found it really beneficial at the time because like I really needed it at that stage.
Yeah.
But then similar to you, I went back to it because people were like, oh, I DM'd you on Instagram, and like you just miss out, you do miss out on social cues and things.
Right.
But I did notice when I went back on it, like it was such a fresh pair of eyes, and like I saw people posting, and it seemed so alien to me after being off for a while. People captioning their life and kind of being a marketing agency for their personal life,
Right.
which we all do.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, like you say, it is true. Like when I went back to Instagram as well, that is a lot of what I saw is kind of like, yeah, people marketing their lives. But in a way, I feel like coming back to it and having time away from it sort of gives you the perspective that you sort of need to manage that usage.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can live without it, really. And for me, it's just about managing it and then realizing that I will probably get addicted to it in the near future.
Right.
But well, I'll get mildly addicted to it, but just be aware of that. One thought that crossed my mind when I was watching your videos, I was like, how did you get so interested in the field of self improvement?
It's kind of like in a way, like there's two aspects to it. So firstly, I mean, when I was quite young, maybe 16, 17, I struggled quite a lot with depression and mental health. And I think weirdly enough, for a lot of people, actually, having these kinds of issues really kind of opens you up to having a will to be happy. I think an unfortunate truth is that a lot of people today, they kind of see happiness as unattainable thing, maybe, or something that can't really be changed. But experiencing mental health problems taught me really that happiness is definitely something you can achieve and something that I should work towards. And so I got more deeply into self-improvement, into philosophy.
Do you think if you like struggle with your mental health, or like if you go through like a rough patch where you felt like in despair or whatever, do you think that like that kind of teaches you to be on your own? Because at the end of the day, you have to like get yourself out of that situation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's one of the big things that I actually got from it, because when I was going through those problems with my mental health, I didn't really have much of a very in real life support network. Like my parents weren't very supportive of anything, or like friends, for example. Maybe that was just me not wanting to speak to them more. But I think for sure it developed a lot of like self-reliance in me, which I think is very important for people. Because another issue that I see today is a lot of people are very reliant on external things for their happiness, especially other people. I think one of the big maybe addictions even of our generation is like people addicted to other people as their sole source of happiness. But going through something and having that kind of adversity really teaches you in a way to be very self-reliant. And so now I can say that I would be happy even if I was alone in a room somewhere for a long period of time, which is quite a freeing feeling in a way.
Yeah, very much so. And people are addicted to other people. I think that's very true. And like, it's almost like a crutch. I remember I had like low self esteem in school when I was like 17, 18. And then there's definitely periods in university, but it does make you change because you have to change, really. You can't stay the same because if you stay the same, you'll still be in the same circumstance, the same environment. So,
Right, for sure.
Yeah. And I think people do change, and like if you're addicted to someone else, you're projecting like your self image or your values, your worth on someone else, and yeah, it's kind of like a fearful way to live.
Mm.
Yeah. So you talk about ruts on your YouTube channel, like getting into a rut, which I think everyone goes through maybe like that, once or I think I go through like a rut like once or twice a year, maybe for a few weeks or whatever. For whatever reasons, people slip into these bad habits or like, just kind of get into like a negative mindset, a low vibe. How would you recommend for someone to get out of that kind of vibration or
Right. I think the first step, which is kind of so crucial, is actually deciding that you want to. Because I feel like a lot of people, and a lot of the time with these, just by nature, because often they're very like dopaminergic, these ruts, you spend a lot of time doing all of these things. They're quite hard to kind of break free from that. So the first step always is you actually have to make a conscious decision that, do you know what, I want to actually change my life and get myself back on track. And then another thing that I'd say is, so the way that I always start off with getting out of a rut, and I don't know where I found this method or if it's semi-original or what, but I call it like the input output method. So I'll literally just write down on a piece of paper, input at the top and output. And then basically I'll just go through and write down everything that I'm currently inputting into my life. So whatever it is at the time, social media, pornography, drugs, drinking, smoking, whatever. And I just think just being able to list out all these bad things is very powerful in the way that you can actually like come to terms with them. You can target specifically the areas that you need to break free from. And from there, once you can kind of cross off all the things that you know give you a bad output, i.e. poor mental health, you can structure your life in a way that retains the good inputs. And then you can also ask yourself, okay, what other things make me feel good? I think that's another crucial step, is asking, what have I done in the past when I've felt happy? Meditating, reading, taking cold showers, exercising, and adding those back into the input column. And then this goes on to wider habit formation. But then essentially you need to start doing all the good inputs and taking out the bad inputs, which sounds obvious, and it is obvious, and it is hard as well. But that essentially then comes down to, in a way, being disciplined, but also being quite flexible with your approach to like reincorporating these positive habits in your life. And then I guess by nature, if you're inputting good things and you're not inputting bad things, you'll very quickly get out of that state of a rut.
Yeah, I really like that. I want to try that next time I get into a rut.
Sure.
But what do you meditate often?
Yeah, so I meditate between 1 and 3 times a day, depending on, and they'll all be of different lengths. So in the morning, I do a 13-minute meditation, 1-3. And then in the evenings, if I'm feeling, or like before a workout or after a workout, I'll often do like a little 5-minute meditation. Before bed, if my mind's racing a lot, I'll do another short 5-10 minute meditation. So I kind of use meditation as a tool where and when I need it during the day, rather than just a habit that I need to tick off once a day.
I say on average now I meditate 20 minutes a day just because I get a lot of benefits from it. But say if someone asks you why do you meditate or should I meditate, what would you say to them?
The things that I notice is just a sense of greater calmness and presence. The kind of state that when I go through my day, I'm less impacted by emotions and external events. I'm less drawn to certain things, and I can more easily just rationally choose what I want to do during the day.
I just think being less reactive in situations and like is so unbelievably beneficial, and even in like social encounters, you just have that extra like you have that extra kind of second just to like think of what you
Sure.
want to say. Or what would you say to someone who says that they cannot meditate? That they
Yeah,
just
so I
keep
get this.
thinking.
Yeah, no, I get this a lot. It's a lot of the time in my Discord, I talk to people on there, and they talk to me about how they can't meditate because their mind wanders a lot, or it's constantly racing, or whenever they sit down, they just always are getting distracted. But this is the point of meditation, and it's what so many people, in a way, fail to realize. because people think meditation is about being completely focused on your breathing for 15 minutes. But if you were completely focused on your breathing for 15 minutes, you'd have almost no benefits from the meditation. All the neuroplasticity that occurs, all of the increased density of your grey matter, all of the benefits that you get from actually meditating happen because you have to repeatedly refocus your brain. So in a way, if you're someone who struggles a lot with meditation, if you're someone who sits down and your mind keeps wandering, then you're actually the perfect person to be meditating, and you're going to see the most effects from it.
Yeah. I always say that, like, if you try to sit down for 5 minutes and you said to yourself, I can't meditate because you're thinking, but if you realize that you're thinking at least once, then that's meditation.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because like a few of my friends are curious, and I try to explain it to them that like you're more present and you're more calm and you don't
Mm.
react as much. And then like they respond, is it just like an exercise then like think less? I'm kind of like, it's a bit more than that, really. I do an app called like Sam Harris.
Right.
By a guy called Sam Harris called Waking Up. And it
Mm-hmm.
kind of leads into like Buddhism, like, your mind made self, and what are we if we're not thinking? What
Yeah.
are we if we're not identifying a thought? Yeah, which sounds very abstract to a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, you've touched on something there though as well, which is important, I think, because I think there are definitely two different forms of, or at least motivations around meditation, and I try and do both of them. So there's a kind of health focused meditation, which is your motivation is very specifically to increase your attention span, to be calmer, to have more presence. But then, like you say, there is definitely a form of meditation that is more deeply spiritual, which has all of its own benefits as well. And these may be benefits that takes you longer to realize, but they're definitely there. And if anything, that spiritual form of meditation is probably, I don't know if I could say help me more, but I can kind of feel the effects of that form of meditation more so than purely meditating with a motivation for improving different health aspects.
You said like the spiritual side of meditation. How would you try to describe that? Tough
So for
question.
me, yeah, right. So the difference I'd say is you're coming at it with some sort of philosophical idea behind it. So for me, that was Buddhism. It was specifically Zen Buddhism. And you kind of come at it with this idea that what you're really trying to do through this meditation is actually achieve a set goal within this period of however long you're going to meditate for. And that goal, in a way, is to remove the barrier that you have between ego and like the universe. So there's this idea in Buddhism called dualism, which is that essentially a lot of people see the world in a very dualistic sense. They have I and them. But what spiritual meditation tries to do, or at least Zen meditation, is to remove that barrier and teach you through experience that you're actually part of the universe, not separate from it. And in many ways, that's taught me so much about calmness, about compassion, but also is given me the outlook on life that, like, in a way, a lot of things don't really matter that much. I'm just one part of like a cosmic whole. And so if something goes wrong, if I've just finished editing a 2-hour video and I delete the file by mistake, it's not really the end of the world. These things can kind of be overcome. And I think in that way, the more spiritual form of meditations help me better rationalize certain emotions and thoughts.
Non-duality is interesting, and again, something that I've read a bit about, but I'd find it hard to describe. Like, so you said it's just oneness with the universe. That
Yeah, so there's this
yeah.
in Zen Buddhism, there are these things called koans. It's called Koan. I mean, the most famous one is if a tree falls in a forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? But they're kind of these questions that a Buddhist practitioner would ask themselves while they were meditating. And there's a book called The Gateless Gate, which has, I think, 47 koans in them. And you slowly work your way through each meditation. And each time you have a koan, so the first koan is, does a dog have Buddha nature? Which sounds like nothing. But you slowly, while you meditate, you come to different answers, and it sort of represents a transition through the phases of like dualistic thought. Because at first you think, yeah, sure, the dog has a Buddha nature because that's what I've been taught by Buddhism. And then you move on to ask the question, well, does the dog really even exist? Are you in any way separate from the dog? And coming to that realization that in reality you and the dog are just the same thing is I guess, well, the idea behind like a non-dualistic approach.
So you and the dog are the same thing, and you and the dog are just forms of consciousness reflecting the universe. Is that the theory?
I mean, the Zen Buddhist idea is that it's not even a form of consciousness. I can't remember the exact words behind it. It's like awareness, not consciousness. But it's the idea that, I mean, if you look at it on a very scientific level, you and the dog are made up of exactly the same things. You're both made up of the same base blocks and atoms. And so what is really the difference, except for the fact that you perceive there to be a difference? And yeah, that's basically it.
You talk about changing identity. How did meditation help you change your identity?
So my view on identity essentially is that, like, for a lot of people, they want to become a certain person. They want to have certain values. They want to have certain strengths in their life. But the truth is, if you're very introspective and you look back over your own life, there have been times throughout your life where you've embodied those different characteristics. So say you want to be a warm person, a kind person, a happy person. There have been times in your life where you've embodied each one of those things. So changing your identity isn't really about bringing new things into your life, but essentially remembering to do these values that you already have within you. And so meditation is a powerful tool in that, because of the presence it gives you, because it actually lets you be rational and, in a way, remember to do these things. And if you can remember to do them enough, they become part of your like ingrained identity.
Interesting. So you said that it's not about becoming a completely different person. It's just like you want to be more confident, you want to be more outgoing, more disciplined. Just identifying that you already have those traits and just embodying them more, because everyone was confident at one point.
Exactly. So take confidence as an example. A lot of people who believe that they're very shy will have probably had a time in their life where they interacted with someone and they had, well, a good time doing it. And so it's kind of the idea that, well, if you've done it once, it is something that you are capable of. It's just not something that you're letting yourself do in a way. And so I think it's important to kind of reshift identity as trying to bring out things from your personality rather than trying to add things into it.
Did you feel that you needed to change identity? Did you ever undergo like a big shift in your personality or your views?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm still going through that. This is the other thing with identity, is that you can want to change your identity, but you're never going to reach that point. Because, well, for one reason, this is an imaginary thing. The person that you want to be is so imaginary that you're never going to actually attain that level of perfection ever. And so identity shift is a constant process, and something that I'm still doing now, of kind of like incorporating things that, or bringing out things that are like things that I want to embody, things that I want to do. And slowly, those things become more dominant than the things that you don't value in yourself. And so your identity starts to slowly progress. But the idea that you'll ever change your identity, I don't think is true. It's an unattainable goal.
You said slowly. I think that's like very important with self-improvement. Like,
right.
Just to realize that it's like super slow. That if what's led me to like failure, like certain projects or personal goals, is that obviously you have to be ambitious. But if you expect too much in the short term and too much change, you can set yourself up to fail. Sure. If your morning routine is like 10:30, or if you don't have a morning routine, then all of a sudden you say like, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. for the next 2-3 months.
It's so true. I think it's very important that you give yourself the time to do it. Because like you say, I mean, so many people have these ideas with habit formation that they'll go on like a streak. People love the word streak, and they'll go on like a 10-day meditation streak. And then on the 11th day, they'll have gone out the night before, got really pissed, woken up hungover, and they won't meditate. And so what they do is they say, well, I fucked it. Those 10 days beforehand mean absolutely nothing. And so on day 12, they don't meditate either. But it's just, this is just the constant problem with self-improvement, I think, is this like this rigidity to it. Because in reality, if you meditate for 10 days and on the 11th day you don't, great, you've meditated for 10 out of the past 11 days. But we see that as a failure now because of self-improvement.
As humans, like we all have needs. Like we need to socialize, and like we're going to forget things occasionally. We're not robots. What's your framework for habits and incorporating new habits, or how do you manage that?
Okay, so my framework for habit formation is I will pick 6 habits that I want to incorporate. some form of training, so physical exercise, some act of love during your day, so talking to your parents, talking to a stranger on the street, some purposeful action, so working towards a purpose or a goal that you have, learning something through a podcast, through reading, through any of these things, an act of suffering, which often people don't quite understand, but can be something as small as taking a cold shower or an ice bath, or sleeping on the floor, or saying that you're not going to eat a certain food that you really want, and then finally breathing, which is just meditation. But crucially, what you need to do is you take these 6 habits that you want to incorporate, and then you tell yourself that it's okay that I only do 4 of them each day. And that works because it isn't rigid, exactly, because you don't need to tick off all 6. Because if I had to tick off all 6 of them, and one day I really didn't feel like going to the gym, or one day I didn't leave my house and so I couldn't perform an act of love or something, then it's very difficult to, you feel bad for not ticking that off. And so the next day you're less likely to complete the other 5 of them. So it's very important that you only make yourself do, say, 4 out of the 6 habits that you set about to achieve. And then also, I think it's important to have habit categories. So instead of necessarily saying, look, I want to meditate for 30 minutes every day and set that as your habit, just having a broader category of, like, breathe, for example, is the one that I use. But is the idea that, okay, so maybe that'll be a 5-minute meditation. Maybe that'll be going on a walk without headphones in. Maybe that'll be who knows what else, but some other aspect that kind of achieves the same goal, but isn't necessarily a specific and rigid habit to do.
Do you track your habits? Because like I believe that tracking is like really important. Like I try and track my gym work and stuff, but it's a fine line between like tracking being very beneficial for like progress and also like spending too much time on like tracking it and
Right.
over planning your week and like taking off your meditation every night.
For sure. So I think the gym's different. I track the weights that I lift just because I have to. But in terms of general tracking, so I've actually got it right here. This wasn't planned, but that's the kind of whiteboard that I use. And I've basically just listed each day along the top and then the habits that I kind of want to do during that day. And it's not necessarily that I tick them off or that I'm counting to get streaks, but just the act of having a list of the different things that I want to do each day is quite useful, because I can just sit there each morning, look at it and say, okay, today I need to do this, 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 this. And I don't tick them off, but it's just a useful kind of reminder that they're things that I have to do that day.
Cool. It's nice to have that like visual reminder also.
Right. That is, but that's something I also recommend to people, is just probably one of like the top 3 investments that I made in self-improvement was buying a whiteboard. Like, it's so important just having something that you can always see, that is big, and that you can actually like just interact with, because it's different on your phone because you have to tap into an app when you want to check something, and different when you have something that's just ever present, sat there in the corner of your room staring at you.
Do you journal?
Yeah, I journal every day. That's one of the other things that I'd say are in the kind of top 3 self-improvement things. So journaling, I think, is also so important. Just, I mean, so the way that I journal is, it's a kind of like stream of consciousness approach. So I'll literally just sit down with a pen, with my journal open, and just write about anything, about what I'm doing that day, about the fact that I need to go and eat food in 20 minutes, about the fact that I'm meeting someone tomorrow. I'll just write about anything. And it often doesn't matter. It doesn't really mean very much. But I think just being able to write down the thoughts that you have in your head really helps you to rationalize them. So something I say is that it bridges the gap between the subconscious and the conscious, which is this idea that you have a lot of shit going on in the back of your head, but writing it down really lets you visualize and rationalize that approach. And so it's a very powerful tool to journal. And that's I've never done anything like bullet journaling or these kind of very rigid journaling approaches.
Yeah, I'm the same. I just like every morning I just like whip out the laptop. I have like a Notion page for it, and I just like literally the exact same as you, just like garbage that comes out of my head.
Yeah.
And I read back on it sometimes, and it's actually like so funny to listen back. I'm like, is that even me? Like, it's like, but it is me. But like, I actually find it funny to listen back, just so random. But I do think it is interesting to like realize like, whoa, that's what I'm thinking. And other times, like sometimes I do journal a lot. Like when I'm like, if I'm ever upset or overwhelmed, like sometimes I journal at night, and
Yeah,
it's very beneficial to go back, I think, and to read how you felt,
sure.
because
Yeah,
then
for
you
sure.
kind of have that, yeah, awareness. If you do get overwhelmed or anxiety, you have that like small little awareness in the back of your head that it's just another phase, that like the last time it happened, like because you have it
Right.
tracked.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's something. It's so true. Because I mean, like, I've got like 5 years worth of journals, and every so often I'll go back and read over them, and just like look through them and be like, "Fucking hell, wow, I was really this cut up about this girl." And then now it seems like, oh mate, that was ages ago. I've grown so much since then, and it that actually gives you a great sense of perspective, because now when I sit there and actually do write in my journal, it's like, well, 6 months from now I'm going to look back at this page that I've written, and it's not really going to matter that much.
yeah, I definitely recommend it to anyone. And I read a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. You told me you read that, I think. Have you read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron?
I have not. That might have been someone
Oh, you
else.
haven't. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up. A different guest.
Right.
But she talks about just journaling, like jotting down your thoughts in the morning, specifically
Hmm.
for activity purposes, and how just getting away that like kind of like natter in your head, like that kind of bitchy thought. It's like me just giving out in my head about like my life, like my circumstances, and
Mm.
just to get that out of your system. She says that opens you up to creativity, which I think it does. Like I think that it helps me also creatively.
I've never really, like, maybe wrongly so, but I've never specifically set times to do journaling, because I find, like, for me journaling, I always like, it needs to be something that I want to do. I don't think I could force myself to write in a journal, but I think definitely it's so useful just to kind of open your brain in that way. I mean, similar to meditation, I think another massive benefit that meditation has is that it really just opens your brain up and lets a lot of spontaneous thoughts come in that wouldn't otherwise be able to. The problem with today's society, that I think we have so much input constantly, so much stimulation. I mean, I just made a video and I said something very similar, but we're constantly stimulated. I mean, these days people are like running with music playing, they shower with music playing, they're falling asleep to TV shows, they're watching YouTube when they eat food. We're constantly stimulated. There is almost never a time period in our lives where it's just us and our brains and we can just sit there and actually think about things. And so it's just crucial, yeah. And journaling, I'm sure, helps a lot with that.
Yeah, the first time I think that I went through like a long period of like no stimulation was last year when I was backpacking in South America, and I went to Guatemala, and I just like for whatever reason I kind of just found it really easy to be like super productive, and I was getting up at like 6 in the morning, and I
Right.
was like hiking most mornings, and I was doing a lot of exercise, and I was having like a really good time, like a lot of like hiking on my own and stuff, like just complete solitude, zero stimulation, and like I intended on doing it more backpacking, but I kept like meeting people, traveling, and then I was teaching English for a while, and I kind of like get caught up like just socializing and stuff. And obviously, nothing wrong with that, but I knew kind of I wanted that like period of like complete detachment, and it was the first time in my life where I really felt just like grounded and a lot less like anxiety. Like I actually, well, that's actually not true. Before that, I was teaching English in a small village in Colombia,
Hmm.
and it was like I was living in like this rural house in a small village with like these three other teachers, and like literally like cows like in a field in Colombia. It was like very remote, and we had such a simple life. Like, we all used to just live together in a house, walk into the school, and then it's like get food in town, and just come home in the evening at 5 o'clock, and that would be our life. I was like, we didn't have like mobile connectivity, like where we were, we had to go into town and stuff, and we were all just saying like how like much happier we were, and like how easy life was, just kind of being
Yeah,
sucked
for sure.
indoors. Like, yeah. And then was when I really realized like how stimulated we actually are, like how stressed we are, and
Hmm.
busy being busy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's a problem because it's hard to capture that feeling inside of a life that isn't a detached life, like you're saying, like traveling. It's hard to capture that inside of the life that you're actually living. I mean, some things that I've tried to do. So one idea that I have is like is making things analog, because a lot of us, like you were saying before with journaling, actually, is like writing a journal entry, for example, on your computer is something that could so easily be turned into like an analog system. You could write it down with a pen and paper. And if you can slowly make these changes in your life, you can slowly start to kind of replace things that you're using your phone with something else. I think you can slowly kind of capture that essence of simplicity that you're describing, which comes so naturally when you're doing something like traveling, but is so difficult to achieve here.
You mentioned the term intermittent boredom on your
Right.
channel. What is intermittent boredom?
So it goes back to this idea of like constant stimulation, and it's basically the idea that says we need to be bored, and boredom is a really important thing in our lives. Boredom is great, like we just said, for creativity. It's great for introspection, but it's also crucial for motivation. If you're kind of never bored, if you're constantly stimulated, there's not much impetus to actually go and do something that's difficult. And so I find that often when I'm very bored and I'm just sort of lying there, I find it really easy just to go and do some work, because at that point it seems really interesting. So the idea behind intermittent boredom is setting aside periods of your day where you say, okay, I'm not going to have any form of input in this time. I'm going to intentionally be bored for a while and just fully feel it and let myself think and let my mind wander and let myself choose what I actually want to do. And so I think it's important to do either maybe in the morning when you wake up from like 6 a.m. till, don't know, midday. You can set aside a time during there where you just say, okay, I'm not going to use any form of like digital technology. And just having those periods where you don't have input is so important.
Yeah, that like just constantly stimulated. Like you're just so tense. I think like, I can feel it in my body. And like when I came back from backpacking after teaching in Colombia for a while, and then like in Guatemala, I was like doing a lot of hiking, and yeah, I was like wasn't on my phone at all, and I wasn't drinking. I really like just realized that I wanted to be creative, and I didn't have that realization before traveling. I wasn't very fulfilled with my job, and that was kind of the reason why I went backpacking. And I felt a bit like stuck, and I just came back with this like kind of realization that I wanted to be creative, and that was the drive that I was missing. That I wanted to express myself. And
Sure.
that all came from boredom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was like before that I was very not aligned with like what I really wanted to do and why I felt so like unfulfilled.
In a way, it goes back to that adversity thing. I think it's important to go through periods of your life where maybe you're not particularly happy, so that you can come to realize that you want something different. I think Sartre has this idea, and he talks about like identity, and he says that like people identify a lot with the jobs that they do, and they're a waiter, for example. I was a waiter for the past 12 months. And if you try too hard to be a waiter, and if you enjoy your job too much in a weird way, you kind of you lose the possibility to kind of want a different identity. You lose the possibility of wanting something else. And so I think, yeah, boredom and to a point, even adversity and uncomfortability are great for finding your purpose.
Do you think that everyone should pursue finding their purpose?
Yeah, I do, but I don't think a purpose needs to be what it's become inside of like the self-improvement sphere. But it does help to know what you want to do. It gives you a lot of direction. And so the sooner you can come to that realization, in many ways, the better, even though it goes against the traditional advice of you've got ages, you're still very young. But I think purpose is, on the one hand, can change. So a purpose that I had, my purpose used to be something very different to what it is now. And once you kind of achieve that layer of purpose, you then move on to another one. And so purpose shifts. But also purpose doesn't need to be a very like a tenable thing. And a lot of the time now we have these ideas that a purpose should be something like, a lot of the time, business. For some reason nowadays business has become purpose, and people say, yeah, my purpose is becoming a YouTuber. I think a purpose can be something different. For example, one of my biggest purposes in life is just happiness, and it's just achieving happiness. And so for me, a good life and like doing a good thing during my day is just doing things that work towards that purpose, which is happiness, for example.
I was always like so uncertain as to what I wanted to do. I worked in IT as like project manager, and I was always like so uncertain what my purpose was. And I was like, I don't know if I'll ever find it. And then I didn't even know what I really wanted, like what do I actually want from life? You said happiness. I think that's something that's kind of important to like think about. But for me, I think it's just peace. Like every day, just be not all the time, but like just be able to come back to like that feeling of peace, calmness.
Right. True. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I probably encompass that somewhere in my idea of happiness. I think we're probably saying the same thing, but yeah, I think, yeah, happiness, tranquility, they're definitely things that I think should be goals. But I think as well, it's kind of a freeing thing to have a goal like that. Because like, so you talk about doing
Yeah.
jobs that you don't enjoy, but like, in a way, these don't really need to be problematic things. Like I said, there's been times in my life where I've worked in bars, worked in restaurants. It's not a bad thing. If you can still achieve things outside of that, you can still follow purposes in other regards. You don't need to necessarily, I don't know, like dislike the job that you currently do. And I think having a purpose like something like happiness, something that's more ephemeral, lets you come to terms with the fact that, yeah, well, maybe I'm not going to be working in a job that I absolutely love, but that's okay because I'm still doing a lot of other things that I like.
So your goal is happiness, and what do you think will bring you happiness?
It's hard to say, really. I mean,
There's a loop around.
yeah, it's multiple
This is
things.
a never-ending loop. Yeah.
Not exactly, but I think so. The framework that I had, and it's if you remember back to those 6 things that I mentioned before: train, love, purpose, learn, suffer, and breathe. I think for me, happiness is encapsulated in those 6. If you have all of those 6 things pretty much locked down in your life, for me, it's very hard not to be happy. Of course, once your basic needs are met, if you have food, shelter, these things, having those 6 as the kind of extra step, I think at that point you can live a very happy life.
Do you ever get imposter syndrome, like posting on YouTube? Do you ever get anxiety about putting stuff out there? But like,
No,
obviously,
not really.
yeah.
I don't know. I think, to be honest, it's like it's one of those things because it's hard to say because my channel still isn't like particularly big. Like I've never been recognized by anyone on the street or anything. So I don't really feel like an imposter because I don't really think that it's
You're
that
still the
big yet
same.
in a way.
Okay, you haven't got there.
Maybe when I've got a few more subscribers, you can ask me the question
Okay.
again.
NoFap is like a big thing that's in like the male self-improvement space.
Sure.
And so is NoFap like, is that just not masturbating or is that not watching porn? Because I get confused.
Everyone's got a different definition of it. I think it's in a way it's important to set your own goal. I mean, for me, when I was really on NoFap, we can talk about NoFap more. My view on it is essentially, I think it's a bit spurious, but the idea was that sure, have sex, but don't masturbate, don't watch porn was always the definition that I used.
Like definitely not watching porn. I think porn is like the worst thing ever, man.
Sure.
And yeah, like, and then in regards to like fapping or like masturbating, I think that like less I masturbate, it's actually like better for my mood. And sometimes if you ever do, like you kind of just feel like shit.
No, I
But
agree. I mean, the reason why I say like NoFap is bullshit is not
yeah,
because it doesn't work. Like I feel way better when I don't fap. But the reason why I say it's bullshit is because it's a replacement. Because a lot of people, especially young people, think that their entire lives are ruined because they watch porn, and that if they just fix this one thing, their life will be fine again. And so they struggle and struggle for years and years. They have NoFap and a 90-day streak as their purpose in life. And they fail to realize that, A, your life sucks because you're living a shit life, not because you watch porn. And B, you're never going to be able to quit porn anyway until you start living a good life. So that's basically why I think NoFap is bollocks in self-improvement.
like if you do masturbate, like not the end of the world, really.
Right. That's what I say. I
Yeah.
always, something funny, I think, is like, what I like to say to all these kids that come to me. There's a dude out there who has a wank twice a day and makes more money than you, is happier than you, and gets more girls than you. So this isn't the problem.
Mm.
Your problem in life
Yeah.
is a lot of other things other than the fact that you're watching porn.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's kind of going back to like unrealistic expectations in the self-help industry. I think,
Right.
yeah, there is a lot of unrealistic expectations. That's why I kind of like brought up at the start. Like, there's a few guys who I like watch. Like, I used to watch a bit, like Hamza, and there's another guy like Jack Hopkins. And
Mm.
like, I don't have anything against them personally. Like, they're definitely
Right.
smart guys and stuff. Like, they're a bit like red pillish, maybe. But yeah, anyway, I'm not going into that. But I do think that sometimes the expectations are unrealistic. Do you know Chris Williamson? He's like a podcaster.
I've heard of him. I've probably watched one or two of his videos, but never
Yeah.
properly gotten into them.
He actually had Hamza on his podcast. That was an interesting conversation, and it was kind of just like a to and fro about Hamza and like the content he puts out because like basically it was kind of saying that like he doesn't abide by a lot of the stuff he puts out there. So that was kind of the general gist. And Chris Williamson was saying that like, you shouldn't be disingenuous, etc., etc. And Hamza was saying that if he doesn't say certain things with authority, people won't listen to him. And he was kind of explaining why maybe some of his content doesn't align with his own views personally. It was an interesting conversation, but that's kind of where I get the context a bit that like sometimes like self-help, YouTube, people can be misled and that it makes people a bit extreme.
That is true. I mean, but I recognize that in myself, because like a lot of the videos that I make, like I'm not. I think they very much so paint the picture of someone who like has everything together. But I think in a way it's not really a bad thing, because for a lot of people that watch the channel, and at least the way that I kind of felt it myself when I would watch self-improvement channels, is that it's nice to have someone to look up to, someone to idealize, someone to ask yourself, okay, what would they do in this situation? And so, not necessarily that I don't do the things that I say in my videos, because I do them, but the kind of, I think I portray quite a perfect image of myself, and somewhat consciously because I want to create a role model, even though in many ways I probably am not.
I would disagree. I think you are a role model, and like I think that like you set up this YouTube page and like your videos are very good and like you obviously they're very well done, noticeably well done. So you should give yourself a bit of credit. You talked about Flâneur in one of your videos. Maybe I'm mispronouncing that.
Right.
What is that?
So it's, I think in its very literal sense, it's a French concept that means walking without a destination. So it's this idea that you just walk around your city. But I think it speaks to a general mindset that we have these days, which is the idea that everything needs to have a purpose. Everything that we do needs to have some purpose behind it. And that's fueled largely by self-improvement videos. People want to meditate so that they can improve their focus. People want to read so that they can have a better attention span. People want to take cold showers because they want to achieve something from them. But no one anymore does things just for the sake of doing them. And that's essentially what Flâneur means. And what I try and say is, just do things for the sake of doing them. Read a book because you like the story. Play the guitar because you like the music behind it. You don't need to have a purpose behind everything. And often having a purpose behind things restricts you because you don't do certain things because you don't believe they're productive or purposeful.
So it's like not trying to control too much, do you think?
Up to a point, but also, I mean, it's just like, in a way, like fun, having fun, doing things because you enjoy them is a habit you should be incorporating into your self-improvement. It's one of the things you should be ticking off every day. It's just saying, today, have I done something that I did just for the sake of doing it? And I mean, that's, just try and do some aspect of Flâneur every day.
It's so true, and when I did my like intense it was like for a month, monk mode, where I was like no distractions, no partying, just goals,
Right.
tracking everything. And my one takeaway from that period was that I just need to have fun. I have needs as a person, and like if ever this week, for example, if like I'm meeting up with my buddies and maybe it's like 11 o'clock and if the guy's like, oh, do you want to go to like get a beer or like do you want to go to a cafe and get like a tea or coffee? And I'm like, maybe I should go to bed. Maybe I should go to bed because I've work in the morning and stuff to do. I'm always like to myself, you know what, just like if you're going to enjoy yourself, just do it because
Just do it.
it's the most
Exactly.
important thing, really. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I think. I mean, like, I go out with my friends maybe 2-3 days a week, and I do all of these things that aren't necessarily self-improvement, right? We go out drinking, we stay up late. And then you've got some people who will do these things, and in the back of their heads, they'll have Hamza sat there calling them like a soy boy for doing it, or a Jeffrey, or whatever he says. But it's just not true. And you need to have these aspects of fun. Because like I say, sure, I go out drinking 2-3 times a week, but I still meditate. I still make YouTube videos. I still study at uni. I'm still doing all this productive stuff. And so going out with my friends doesn't undercut those positive things that I'm doing in my life.
Yeah, it's so true, man. And like, it is very true that like you have this like self-loading in the back of your head, like as you said, Hamza, the little Hamza devil calling you a soy boy. Like,
right, exactly.
Yeah, it's like it is self-loading, isn't it? Like it's kind of like hating a bit of yourself. Yeah.
And hating a natural part of yourself, just the urge to socialize and have fun.
It's just like being a person.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I think things are a lot more competitive for us, for our generation. It's like very competitive being a guy now, not like social media. We're all comparing ourselves in like social media, and like there's more opportunities. I feel like jobs, but I almost feel that like makes the landscape a lot more competitive than that.
Sure.
There's a lot of information about like dating now, and like people are like having less sex, and like social media has kind of screwed the dating market a bit.
The reason why I think it's more of a problem now is because nowadays people all compete in the same ballparks. Back in the day, for example, now everyone, whether you're an ugly guy or the best looking guy in the world, you've got a Tinder account. And so you're competing against the best of the best. But if you're just some dude who approaches a girl on the street and tells her she's cute and asks her for a number, then you have the same chance as you did 70 years ago in that same regard. It's just people nowadays are competing. They are competing. But the question really shouldn't be, oh, why is life so hard now? Everything's a competition. It should be, well, why am I competing in the same game as all these people? Why can't I just step back and actually do different things with my life, set a different competition for myself?
It's funny, like in Ireland, when I lived in Ireland, I left back in 2020, and yeah, I left in 2020. That was like 4 years ago, and I think like approaching a girl on the street, like just saying how are you, whatever, like I would never have done that at home.
Right.
I would have just found that so cringe. I would have felt like very judged, but I think like I've lived abroad now for 4 years. But yeah, I do it a bit now. Like it's a lot more natural to me. But like I don't know, maybe it's an Irish thing or not. Like, Irish people can be kind of reserved, maybe, but like you'd be like kind of cringe.
No, I think it's just it's a being at home thing. I feel like whenever you're in a place where you don't know, you have the ability to reinvent yourself, and so you go out and you're more extroverted. Whereas when you're at home, there's always in the back of your head, oh, but what if this person sees me do it? That would be so embarrassing. Which is, I guess, one thing you need to, just generally people need to try and get out of their heads, but I think that's the case.
Yeah, it's all in your head. Like that's the funny thing. Do you believe in like manifestation? And like sometimes when I journal, I try writing prompts, and I write down my goals for the year, my top 10 goals for the year every morning. And I do find it very good. And it's good just like kind of realign yourself what you want. And then like sometimes they do change as well. Sometimes I realize I don't actually want something. But just writing it down each day is like I find it beneficial. Do you believe in like manifestation, and like do you think that you can like rewire your subconscious mind? And
yeah, to an extent. I mean, I don't write my goals down every day, but again, on that same whiteboard, I've got all my goals written on the bottom of it. So I'll have a look over at them. I don't agree that manifestation occurs in some spiritual sense. But I do agree that when you set your mind to something, if I have on my whiteboard, for example, that I want to, I want to get to 70 kilograms of weight, then it's going to be in my head, and I'm going to be more likely to do a workout. I'm going to be more likely to eat more food. I'm going to be more likely to have an extra meal that day. And so I'll be more likely to achieve that goal just because it's constantly in the back of my mind.
Gotcha. And what do you think about people who like have like literal manifestations and they say like they have like these mantras that they repeat themselves every day? Do you think that like reinforces your dialogue in your head or?
Oof. Kind of like, do you mean like affirmations?
Well, like if you go on YouTube, like if you type in like affirmations, like people say like, "Oh, I am calm," and like it's just like sentences you'd say about yourself like
Right.
that. I think it's kind of similar to what you were saying earlier about habit change, where you write down what you like about yourself, and I suppose maybe it's
Yeah,
just reinforcing. It's your identity, I suppose. I think.
sure. I'd say two things. Is number one, I'd be careful because there are certain things that you can tell yourself which aren't beneficial. For example, if you tell yourself you're smart, if you tell yourself you're confident, there's been studies done on children and on development that show that if you tell a child or praise someone, generally speaking, for an aspect of their character, it actually works counterintuitively and makes them less likely to do that. So it's an interesting thing. If you're going to do these kind of things, I'd say focus on telling yourself, I've worked hard, I've put good effort in today. These things, not necessarily parts of your identity, like I am confident, I am smart, I am calm. These can have quite harmful effects. But also it's the question of like, you have to then act on these things. Because affirmations can be a safety blanket in a way, because you can have someone that says, I am calm, I am calm. But what would be better is for them to spend 10 minutes meditating. And unless you're doing both of those things, I think often people just do the affirmations and then forget to actually do the work, especially with those very identity focused affirmations.
I don't like strong beliefs in affirmations, but meditation definitely like meditation I could talk about for days. But what I like about when I write down like my goals every day, I don't know if you call that an affirmation, but how it helps me is that like if I write down like one of them is like I want to be calm and magnetic, and like I want to be disciplined or whatever.
Right.
I want to be I want to be a workhorse is what I say.
Mm-hmm.
And like obviously periods I'm lazy, whatever, and I don't mind that. But if I like have to write it down every day, and there's a moment where I should be disciplined, but I'm not disciplined, then I just tell myself like, "You're such an idiot for like getting up every morning and writing in your notebook and
Yeah.
not doing it." And then it kind of like have this like dialogue. I'm like, "Oh yeah, fair enough."
Right.
It's like another bit of resistance that makes me do the thing.
Yeah. I'm sure that's powerful. It's
Yeah,
kind of like an accountability thing.
yeah. If you met your 18-year-old self, what would you say to them?
I don't know. Pretty much just like keep doing what you're doing. You're getting there. Like right now, you might not like yourself. Right now, you might feel like you're doing all this shit and not making much progress and you're not seeing results, but just keep going. Stop stressing the small stuff and believe that this is progress.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show, Tom. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I learned a lot also. So I'm very excited to see how the rest of your 20s play out.
Right. No worries, man. Thank you very
Yeah,
much for having me. It was good chatting to you.
yeah, pleasure, man.
Goodbye, brother.